Hey, Kristen here. I am a neuroscience PhD and Buddhist chaplain, and I'm doing a 100 video series showcasing some of my learning so far in my journey of understanding how the mind works and how it may help people to be able to access freedom, peace, and happiness. So, in the last video, I was alluding to how doom scrolling and activities like that are oftentimes a symptom of like there is something about the mind that's generating some thoughts that are, extremely unpleasant, that are maybe in a way threatening. And that's why a lot of us would go towards like social media and doom scrolling in order to alleviate that. And however, as many of you may have experienced, including myself, the doom scrolling feels really good in the moment, but then afterwards, there's almost this like hangover kind of vibe where it feels really bad. And of course, like we did not utilize our time maybe as we have wished we have used. So I want to use like a very simple meditation concept to see whether it may be helpful to provide some relief that might be different from the usual ways in which one approaches these sorts of mind activities. Um, but I want to preface it first with how most people, because of the way meditation is now used, unfortunately, as a productivity sort of thing, may completely accidentally almost the opposite thing of meditation while they're sitting there quietly looking like they're meditating. So, which I have also fallen into right in the beginning, and it's really easy to take the concept of like I'm going to meditate to be a better person, and then apply a filter of our perceptions that we are trying to unravel, which is essentially going to capture anything we do into whatever it wants us to do. So by that I mean, do you feel like meditation is a self-improvement activity? If so, that itself is one of the trappings. Um, and the reason why is because if we start off with like, I'm going to meditate to be a better person, then that already puts us on the back foot because it implies that, oh, I'm not a good person now and I need to do this activity to be a better person. So, so I feel like this is one of those like really paradoxical, counterintuitive concepts in Buddhist practice, where it's almost like the opposite way is the correct way, and it's really like almost like if you see someone who is like maybe sitting in a tilted way, when you're sitting there for a long time in that direction, you already feel like, oh, this is I'm sitting up straight, but someone else may see you and be like, wait, no, you're actually a bit tilted, and they can correct you, right? So it's something like that. And it's really insidious because the concept of meditation is already something that our perception wants to warp into what it wants us to see. So if I were to take doom scrolling again as an easy example, what's actually oftentimes happening is that like there's a voice in our head. It sounds like us. It sounds like coming from us. It's telling us, hey, you should be doing XYZ, or you suck at XYZ, or some other thing, right? And that voice in our head is extremely unpleasant to hear. However, we can make it go away temporarily if we engage in other activities like social media, etc. Because it's a distraction, right? And it helps us to not engage with those voices, at least long enough. However, it's a vicious cycle because then, we get into this trap of not doing the thing, and then we get into a deeper hole in terms of what we want to do. So instead, what is another way for us to disengage with those unpleasant voices? Um, and I think the other insidious thing about the voices that tell us that we should be doing XYZ is that historically it has worked, right? Like many of us motivate ourselves by telling us, oh, but I don't do X, then I will be behind, or something like that. And like, people who are extremely successful on the outside, especially, are the ones who are oftentimes really good at using that voice to motivate themselves. Like, look at this person, right? So I feel like that is the the one thing where you do have to trust me on faith, because I cannot convince you at this point that that voice is actually not going to be the most effective way to achieve the goals. Um, so the only way I can prove that to you is by pointing out some experiments that you can do and see whether they help and provide a different way towards it. So with meditation, one of the main reasons why we do it is to be able to understand the perception of these voices in our head and thoughts in our head, and to be able to have some distance between them, so that we can then perceive reality in a clearer light. And in order to do that, there, if you look on Insight Timer or any of these apps, there's like a million meditations, right? And I do believe that like many of them do work, as long as they are about building this ability to be aware, um, and to be able to start deconstructing all the layers of concepts that we put on top of how we're perceiving the world. I know it sounds really abstract now. So practically speaking, I would say that one of the easiest ways to meditate is to actually do walking. So I think we all have our images of like the perfect yogi who sitting like full lotus, and very still, right? But that is really not, it can be a bit of a tricky starting point, especially for those who have experienced trauma. It's like the whole freezing response is a little bit triggered when we sit still. So I usually, if I were advising someone to meditate to start, I would say, hey, like try walking meditation. It's very simple. It looks just like normal walking, but the idea is that we focus our attention on the actual walking. So when we're walking, we're putting our foot like one foot in from the other, I think for most of us. And instead, direct your attention to the sensations of the foot touching the ground. If you would like, once you've like established that, you can also just think like left, and match it to your foot, and you would know that your attention has drifted when you start saying left when you put your right foot down, for instance. And this kind of practice, although it sounds really boring, is actually really hard, because the idea is that by engaging in sensations rather than thinking, which is the voices in our head, that gives us a bit of relief from those voices and allows us to engage with actual reality. Because when we are dealing with the voices, we are not engaged in reality, actually. We've abstracted a personal reality, and which, as you can imagine, can cause great suffering for some people. So something as simple as like walking, like really you can just call it walking outside, that already gives us a lot more to be able to disengage with some of these vicious cycles that happens when we're overly engaged with our thoughts. The other thing is that, like, if you're able to walk outside, the scenery changes, like having some sort of changing visual sensory input is also really helpful, rather than staring at the screen and having flashing lights, because they're a naturalistic landscape that allows our mind to release some of the attention concentration that is what a lot of these apps are designed to do. So I hope you can take this little walking practice and see if it helps you the next time you are hooked on watching short length videos, etc., or social media platforms. Of course, many of us still need to use it. I mean, thanks for watching this video. But If we're using it to soothe ourselves, then there's a different way here.